You are watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bawa. Our big focus, the Prime Minister's 26-hour touchdown in Russia, which includes a private dinner and some personal time with Putin. But first, your daily dose of the top stories from around the world. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will arrive in Moscow to a particularly warm and special welcome at a private dinner hosted by Russian President Vladimir Putin at his estate in the suburbs of Moscow. The meeting of the two leaders, their first since 2022, is also Mr. Modi's first visit to Russia since the war in Ukraine began and his own first visit abroad for bilateral talks since he was re-elected to office. A left-wing coalition, New Popular Front, is projected to finish first in France's national election, exit polls showed, in a major upset over far-right factions that were forecast to win. Marking 9 months since the war in Gaza started, Israeli protesters blocked highways across the country, calling on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to step down and pushing for a ceasefire to bring back scores of hostages held by Hamas. From Bihar to Britain, Kanishk Narayan has carved out a remarkable journey that now sees him as a Member of Parliament in the United Kingdom. Iran elected a reformist candidate as its next president, but he is unlikely to rattle the regime's status quo, analysts say. Masoud Pezeshkian is the heart surgeon who defeated a hardliner rival for the top post. Thailand is doing away with duty-free shopping at its international airports to boost tourism spending within the country. Well, the Prime Minister will arrive in Moscow to a particularly warm and special welcome at a private dinner hosted by Russian President Vladimir Putin at his estate in the suburbs. The meeting of the two leaders, their first since 2022, is also Mr. Modi's first visit to Russia since the war in Ukraine began and his own first visit abroad for bilateral talks since he was actually re-elected to office in June. The two leaders will be together for most of the events during the two-day, approximately 26-hour visit by Mr. Modi. But our Prime Minister will land this afternoon and receive a ceremonial welcome. Here are the finer details for you.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi all set to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin on a two-day visit to Russia for the 22nd India-Russia bilateral summit. This will be PM Modi's first bilateral visit after being sworn in for the third consecutive term last month. Prime Minister Modi and President Putin have met 16 times in the last 10 years. Two key focus areas are the persistent trade imbalances between the countries and the release of Indians forced into fighting the Russia-Ukraine war.
In last 3 years, trade have expanded, crossed $65 billion. We would discuss and look at further increasing this trend of co-production, as we say, of defense items in India. Connectivity, similarly, is very important for trade and also people-to-people exchanges. International north-south transport corridor is very much on the agenda, and there have been some cargo movements along that. New routes are also coming up, Arctic route or Northern Sea route as it is called.
It's a great pleasure to meet the extended members of the SCO family today.
The visit signals the importance accorded by India to Russia, a long-time ally. President Putin and Prime Minister Modi met at the SCO summit in Samarkand in 2022. Fast forward to 2024, while both President Putin as well as China's Premier Xi attended the SCO summit in Kazakhstan, Prime Minister Modi gave it a skip. External Affairs Minister S. Shankar read out the Prime Minister's message. In a subtle pointer to China, also a close ally of Russia, India said respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity is essential for connectivity and infrastructure projects, as are non-discriminatory trade rights and transit regimes. India called upon SCO to deliberate seriously on these aspects.
They would also share perspectives on regional and global developments of mutual interest. They would also assess the status of bilateral engagements in groupings such as BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, G20, East Asia Summit, and the UN.
The NATO summit in Washington will play out parallel to the 22nd India-Russia bilateral summit. In Washington, a key focus area will be the Russia-Ukraine war. Prime Minister Modi's no era for war dictum defines India's stand on the festering conflict.
आज का युग युद्ध का है नहीं.
And though India has not explicitly criticized Putin's war on Ukraine, PM Modi has expressed some reservations about the war during the last in-person meeting. What has become a recurring feature of PM Modi's diplomacy, he is expected to interact with the Indian community in Russia as well, amid all the hectic bilaterals. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report, NDTV.
We come to you from the heart of Moscow. This is the beginning of Kremlin, and of course, the whole set of churches and important palaces that have seen the unraveling of many politicians, and of course, many political developments right from the 13th century. Well, tomorrow is an important day. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to arrive in Moscow, and he is going to have his first set of bilateral meetings ever since he assumed power as the Prime Minister of India for the third time. These meetings are going to be held with Vladimir Putin, the President of Russia. Remember, India and Russia have had this tradition of having annual meetings every year. 2019 was when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was last in Russia, but that time he was in this eastern city of Russia called Vladivostok. That was for an economic conclave. Tomorrow he's going to be in Moscow, and he's going to be here for 2 days. He's also going to not just have a private dinner, he's not just going to attend a private dinner hosted by President Putin, but also he will be meeting community members, Indian community members who have been residing in Russia for many years. But important takeaways are going to be in this meeting. First, of course, the fact that he is going to be part of this meeting for the first time after the war between Ukraine and Russia broke out, and this is something that the whole world is hoping will end. It has been a prolonged war. It's been 3 years since the war began. This is also his second overseas trip since he assumed charge as the Prime Minister of the country. Remember, he was in Italy a few days ago attending the G7 meeting as a special invitee. Meanwhile, President Vladimir Putin has also been reaching out to Xi Jinping, China and other countries like North Korea, while India has also been strengthening its ties with the USA and other Western countries. So in the midst of all this, India and Russia are set to meet. Remember, Russia has been a long-term, steady, solid friend of India. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Moscow in the midst of all this is also going to reinforce that friendship that Russia has had with India, other than playing the balancing act of maintaining cordiality with other Western powers, even as the Ukraine-Russia war rages on. Most important agenda points on President Putin, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's meeting, of course, the trade, that there is, of course, an imbalance in trade with India's imports increasing from Russia, of course, exports not really increasing that much. In fact, there is a great differential, which is something that India would like to address. In fact, India has been buying a lot of crude oil, Russian crude oil at discounted prices. Other than that, there is tech transfer. There are defense ties that India has had with Russia for many years. Apart from that, people-to-people cultural ties and also use of native currencies. And most importantly, many Indians have also been duped into support roles in Russian military, and they've been fighting on the front lines. This is an objection that India has had with Russia ever since 4 Indians died, and this is something that Indian high delegations have also raised with the Russian officials. We'll keep tracking all that and more for you. This is Vasudha Venugopal with Pooja Arya for NDTV.
What are going to be the key focus areas of the Modi-Putin bilateral, and how exactly are the two sides going to navigate major issues of trade imbalances? Nikki Aaron from RT reports. Listen in.
Well, as we know, India and Russia have enjoyed a very long and stable and fruitful partnership. So when it comes to these talks being held in Moscow, the sky really is the limit. We can expect discussions in all manner of areas, from trade to space to nuclear, and of course that key one, the creation of a fairer multipolar world. And trade imbalances will also be a key issue on the table for discussion, and there are ways to resolve this, whether that's India boosting its exports to Russia, potentially the semiconductor industry, or whether it's the creation of a split-up currency exchange system like New Delhi currently enjoys with Tehran. And as you say, Indians stranded in Russia is another key issue of importance for India, and Russia has also made it clear this is a priority for it. Also, it will be open to dialogue and wanting to find a solution to this issue. But really, there's going to be a very exciting 2 days for Modi in Russia, and the eyes of the world will be trained on Moscow as this meeting takes place, and we'll be following all the latest.
Well, joining us for further clarity on the plan of action, former diplomat, Ambassador Dr. V.B. Soni. Thank you so much, sir, for making time for us. Is it a fair assessment that for Mr. Putin, Mr. Modi's visit, which comes right after his state visits to China, North Korea, meetings on the sidelines of the SCO summit, adds to an effort to show that while the Western alliance may wish to isolate him for the war in Ukraine, the global majority, as the Kremlin refers to it, maintains personal and fairly close ties with him?
There are all kinds of twists and spin being given to the visit by the Western media. But the fact is that India and Russia are close friends, and among the close friends, it is important that there should be a bilateral meeting at regular intervals. It hasn't happened because ever since the pandemic happened. But it is time, because Putin has been re-elected and our Prime Minister has been re-elected. So in the new regime, therefore, there has to be a demonstration of the fact that there is not going to be many changes, because relations are bound by long-term interests. Right. And the long-term interests are that while we are diversifying our relationship with countries in the West, but at the same time, we can't possibly be seen to be shying away from Russia. And it is important that there are so many developments happening in the world, and it has impact on both the countries individually and jointly. So it's important that we must take stock, the two leaders must take stock of what is happening and how do they perceive and how they should go about taking the next step. Because basically, idea is that our two countries must keep working together. It is mutually beneficial relationship to each other, both in political and strategic, and of course in the economic term. Right. So this is therefore an opportunity for them to renew their interest and to see things which are of concern. And there are things of concern to India. And I think some of the points have been made. Yes. That there is a little bit of an imbalance in trade that has to be addressed. There is an issue of...
in fact, yes, just coming to that, in recent months, there has been a disturbing trend that has come to light where numerous Indians have been deceived with promises of high-paying jobs or educational opportunities in Russia, only to be coerced into fighting against Ukraine. Now, sir, while Mr. Modi's in Moscow, he is expected to rake up this issue and address it. Can we expect any swift resolution as far as this specific matter is concerned?
But I think it's a concern for our country, because we are not a country which provides mercenaries to fight abroad. This is not our fight. So some people can be misled, because there are all kinds of unscrupulous people who promise them the moon. And I have seen a lot of Indians get swayed by the promises which they make. And so that's why they make their beeline to leave country and to go to areas where they think that there will be economic benefit for them or to get job opportunities. Now, in the case of Russia, it is sad that these people have been misled to such an extent that they should go and participate in a foreign war. We don't have a problem with them fighting among each other, but so this issue, this must be addressed, and I think Russia would be quite keen to resolve the issue, because how many Indians are involved anyway? 40, 50, maybe a little bit more than that. So those are not playing a very important role in terms of strategic. So if India were to have such sensitive ideas, such concerns, they will be addressed, and I'm sure that the Prime Minister will get assurance from his counterpart, that is President Putin, that this will be addressed. And I feel it's not going to, in the foreseeable future, it's not going to be an issue that will go unresolved.
Right, an action-packed 26-hour touchdown plan for the Prime Minister. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us with those quick comments.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
With that, let's turn our attention now to the United Kingdom. The parliamentary elections may have disappointed a lot of Indians over Rishi Sunak losing power, but a North Bihar town is celebrating the success of a son of the soil. Kanishk Narayan, an MP of the Labour Party, which has returned to power after a decade and a half, has his roots in Muzaffarpur. That's about 70 kilometers from the state capital. Here's Kanishk's story.
The heart of the Vale is in our people, our history, our potential. Growing up, I felt politics held a sense of hope and of possibility.
From Bihar to Britain, Kanishk Narayan has carved out a remarkable journey that now sees him as a Member of Parliament in the United Kingdom. Having initially pursued a career in the civil services, Narayan left his job and transitioned into the political arena to contest in the UK elections, and is now the MP for the Vale of Glamorgan. His victory marks a significant shift in representation for the constituency, as Narayan is the first ethnic minority MP in Wales and the first from the Labour Party in 14 years. Kanishk's win as a Member of Parliament was met with celebrations not only in his family, but also in Muzaffarpur, where his success was celebrated as a source of pride for the entire community. His uncle Jayant Kumar, director of SKJ Law College, expressed immense pride in Kanishk's achievement that has brought joy to the entire state of Bihar.
हमारे परिवार के लिए तो खुशी का माहौल है ही, साथ ही हमारे जो गांव सोंधो है, गोरौल स्टेशन के पूरब 3 किलोमीटर आगे जो वैशाली जिला में पड़ता है, वहाँ के लोग भी खुश हैं काफ़ी। और इतना ही नहीं, बिहार, मुजफ्फरपुर और बिहार के जितने वासी हैं वो भी खुश हैं, चूँकि पहले पहल कोई बिहारी जो है वो सांसद के रूप में वहाँ इलेक्ट हुआ है।
Narayan was born in Muzaffarpur and studied there until the 3rd standard, after which his family moved to Delhi, until finally relocating to Wales when Narayan was 12 in search of more opportunities. Narayan attributes these opportunities as one of his goals as MP, saying, "That's what Wales has done for my family. That's what I hope to do for the families of the Vale of Glamorgan and in Wales." Prior to his political career, Narayan's professional background included notable work in the Environment Department alongside former Prime Minister David Cameron. His tenure in public service underscored his commitment to environmental sustainability and community welfare, values that he continues to tackle in his legislative agenda even today. As Wales MP, Narayan's key priorities are restoring the economy through creating local jobs, ensuring neighbourhood safety and backing community organisations, reflecting his dedication in serving his community and advocating for change as a Labour MP. With Samia Afsar, Parmeshwar Bawa for NDTV. Meanwhile, the left-wing alliance in France won the most seats in Parliament in a dramatic election, dealing a surprise blow to the far-right party of Marine Le Pen. In the first round of voting a week ago, Le Pen's National Rally came top and was aiming to secure the most seats in France's legislature for the first time in the party's history. But tactical voting and collaboration between Le Pen's opponents to keep her party out of power paid off. This is what final results showed. The election, however, looks set to throw the country into a period of political turmoil, with no single group coming close to winning enough seats for a majority in Parliament. Ross Cullen joins us from Paris with the latest update.
Well, this was a real surprise. Jubilation on the left, but disappointment on the far right. The National Rally Party won the first round of France's general election last week, and they were leading all the pre-vote polls this time, but they have eventually ended up in third place in the National Assembly. Emmanuel Macron's party managed to claw their way back from third place to finish second, but the success of Sunday night was certainly the new Popular Front, the umbrella coalition of 4 different parties on the left who will now have the greatest number of seats in Parliament. The French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal has offered to resign on Monday morning, handing in a letter to Emmanuel Macron, but there's no guarantee that the president will accept it. He may ask Mr Attal to stay on through the Olympic Games and through the summer, but eventually the voices from the left will grow very loud in President Macron's ear, demanding that he appoint a left-wing Prime Minister. For the far right, Jordan Bardella, their leader, did lament the fact that he said they had been undone by dangerous electoral arrangements. He was alluding to the fact that the centrist government and the left-wing opposition agreed not to field candidates against each other in the runoffs so as to run the greatest risk of not splitting the anti-far right vote, and that strategy seems to have worked because the far right are going to finish third. Marine Le Pen, the most well-known figurehead from that party, did say though they were just delaying an inevitable eventual victory, and that she said President Macron's position was now untenable. What is certain is that there will be a lot of political manoeuvring and dialogue in the coming weeks as to how to form a coalition of the left and the centre, if that is the coalition that could come to fruition and be the governing majority. But one thing is also sure is that there will be no easy fix when France has a hung parliament. Ross Cullen, NDTV, Paris.
Well, in other news, Israeli protesters marched through Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, chanting, "We will not give up," on the second consecutive day that they stepped up pressure for a deal to free hostages in Gaza. As the war entered into its 10th month, the demonstrators called on Prime Minister Netanyahu to secure a truce and hostage release deal or step down. The nationwide disruption day began at 6:29 a.m. local time to correspond with the start of Hamas's October 7th attack that triggered the war. Well, news and updates continue in a moment, right after this very short break. As Masoud Pezeshkian emerges victorious from Iran's presidential election, defeating hardliner Saeed Jalili, his presidency promises a shift towards more pragmatic and reformist policies. But how will Mr Pezeshkian's presidency reshape Iran-India relations? Well, India and Iran have historically enjoyed strong economic ties, and under Pezeshkian's presidency, these ties are likely to deepen. The focus will be especially on the strategic Chabahar port, a project to which India has already committed heavy investments. It's an important transit point for trade with Afghanistan and Central Asia, bypassing Pakistan. India has pledged $120 million for the development of the Shahid Beheshti port terminal and offered a $250 million credit line for infrastructure projects in Iran. But experts believe that Iran's general foreign policy is anyways unlikely to change whoever takes over next. The modus operandi and details may, however, be different. Iran, as you know, is one of India's key sources of crude oil, and with Iran eyeing an increase in the exports of oil against the backdrop of ongoing Western sanctions, India could be looking at a reliable and arguably cheaper source of crude oil. The Pezeshkian approach to regional security will be closely watched in New Delhi. His stand related to keeping up the axis of resistance against Israel and strategic regional siding with forces against what he calls the Zionist regime could continue to impact India's tightrope diplomacy in the region. Another platform for close cooperation between India and Iran is the International North-South Transport Corridor, a multimodal transportation route connecting India to Russia via Iran. This corridor increases connectivity in terms of trade and bilateral ties for regional stability. To the US now, where Beryl began lashing Texas with rain and intensifying winds as coastal residents boarded up windows and left beach towns under evacuation orders and also prepared for this powerful storm. Texas officials warned the storm would cause power outages and flooding, but also expressed worry that not enough coastal residents and vacationers in Beryl's path were heeding warnings to leave.